This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio on our flagship station 790 KABC or on Extreme Talk, Sirius XM channel 243, or on the World Wide Web at KLEANradio.com. Let's welcome everybody out there listening tonight. Also in the studio to me is my co-host with the most, the great Andrew Spanswick.
Hey, Judah, what's up?
Owner, operator, KLEAN CEO, and all-around good guy, but he's also been in the field of addiction and mental health for a long, long time.
Yes, many years.
Many years.
22, I think now.
Yeah, and, we wanted to talk about before the show, because there are a lot of people out there. It's Sunday night. There are a lot of people out there that still think it's Thursday night. And still think it's
or they were wishing it was Thursday night.
Yeah, we were sort of joking before the show, but not, how do you know you're an alcoholic? How do you know if you're family? And if you're still dressed in the same clothing as you were on July 4th, there's a good chance you might have a problem with alcohol and drugs. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about was we've been doing amazing things at KLEAN for a while now, and things are really,
Yeah, actually, the likes on Facebook are unbelievable.
Just amazing. And
we just hit another milestone, I think, didn't we?
We're close.
Yeah.
And between our two pages, and it's really amazing, but it's also going to show you how many people out there are needing help. And because we love giving back, and we try to scholarship as many people into KLEAN as we can, into our Washington facility, our West Hollywood facility. And we can't always give away full scholarship beds, but one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight was giving away outpatient to people that needed it.
Well, now that we've really firmed up our residential programs in West Hollywood and then up in Washington, we're now putting a lot of emphasis into growing out our outpatient services. And we have one outpatient service location in West Hollywood, and we have one in Astoria Point, Oregon.
One of the things I do want to talk about tonight is how do you know if you're an alcoholic? How do you know if you're a drug addict? How do you know if a family member is? Because those are really the most important questions, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about recognizing the key signs, and most people know. A lot of the problem also is not just that recognizing that a person's an alcoholic and not just punishing them for it and how you deal with it, but also there's a huge level of denial where people don't really want to accept that they have alcoholism in their family, right? Like that, the fact that people are missing work, or they're missing appointments, or they have constant excuses for things, and nothing ever seems to be working out, and they keep finding a lot of wine bottles and hidden vodka in the bathroom, and there's one guy we used to work with who was an alcoholic, and his wife was in total denial that he was an alcoholic because she said she could never find any vodka. Turned out what he would do is he'd take the hose in the backyard and he would empty it out of water, and he'd fill the whole hose up with vodka. And then he'd sit in the backyard in his chair and just sip off the hose all day.
See, that's genius. That shows you the alcoholic mind.
Right, exactly.
When the alcoholic mind works, there's nothing more beautiful. But when it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it also shows the level of denial both of the alcoholic as well, that that all of a sudden it makes sense to sit there all day and sip off your garden hose with vodka instead of getting help and getting over all the pain and trauma of having to deal with that kind of problem.
So I'd like to hear from people out there. So give us a call. I want to know how you know if you're an alcoholic, how you know somebody's an alcoholic, what you think an alcoholic is almost. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. An amazing sober fact of the day, Andrew: there are more deaths and disabilities each year in the U.S. from substance abuse than from any other cause.
Yes, and most overdoses are polyaddiction, so it's mostly opioids along with alcohol. Is the number one type of overdose, but we still have a fair amount of overdose from cocaine and heroin.
I mean, it's just amazing.
And alcohol, let's not forget alcohol.
And alcohol.
And alcohol causes more accidents than any of the other drugs. So,
talking about accidents, it is July 4th weekend. The cops are out and about. The CHP is?
Yeah.
That's right. Let's go flashback to the 70s.
Wow.
Little Chips. And
there's probably like 3 people alive that know what that is.
You know what? It's one of my, I love that show. I absolutely
one of them's
love
Eric
Chips.
Estrada.
But, there were 138 arrests in L.A. I mean, San Diego had a ton of arrests. I mean, and it's all over. And it's, 68 drivers were arrested on suspicion. And you were talking about denial. I would love to go into the county jail and talk to all 68 of them and say, how many of you are an alcoholic?
Right.
And how many of those people do you think would say, I'm an alcoholic?
Maybe 2.
Maybe 2.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, there's like 5 million people addicted to opioids, and only 20% are getting treatment. So,
I mean, it's insane. I mean, and that's denial. I mean, we see it all the time. We hear it all the time in treatment. We have people in treatment that have to blow breathalyzers from treatment, yet they don't have a problem with alcohol. We have people with scram bracelets that don't have a problem with alcohol. And, you know, if you have okay, so we were talking about before the show, how do you know if you're an alcoholic? If you have a scram bracelet, and to people out there what a scram bracelet is, when the courts give you a bracelet to wear that if you drink,
it sets off an alarm.
It sets off an alarm. You have alcoholism. I mean, I'm going to go on. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, it's obviously, if you've gotten to that point, it should be pretty clear. I mean, you know, I've seen many clients who have 3, 4 DUIs, and it isn't until the point they're facing serious jail time or prison time even, that then they finally say, oh, and it isn't even that they say that they have a problem, but they're sort of forced into treatment.
Right.
And then, you know, that's our job sometimes with those types of clients, is to explain to them, you know, the disease of alcoholism, how they might have, you know, progressed from, you know, use to abuse to addiction, and then also the consequences of having become an alcoholic, what that's done to their lives, and how it's not any coincidence that they happen to be looking at prison time, and that it's a serious problem.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. The calls are lining up. The number here is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're discussing tonight, what is an alcoholic? Are you an alcoholic? How do you know if you or your family member is an alcoholic? So give us a call. Let's go to Unknown calling. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Unknown.
Hello?
Yeah, hi. Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Yes, mine is very simple. It's just preoccupation with it. You're always preoccupied with it. It's either on your mind, you're thinking about it. It's preoccupation with it.
Absolutely, and that's part of it being a compulsive disorder, is that the mind sets itself up to always want to be doing it. And so then the action is then meeting the thought, where you compulsively drink over and over and over again. So preoccupation is the mental trigger to the compulsive physical action of drinking.
I think that's actually absolutely great. You're right.
Yeah.
Anything else, Unknown?
No.
I actually...
Thank you for your time.
Where are you calling from, by the way?
I'm calling from Long Beach.
Long Beach.
Well, welcome
great.
to KLEAN Radio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
I actually think that's great. It's called preoccupation. You're right. Just constant thought. And also
it's also called ruminating thinking. So that's actually the clinical definition. And it occurs,
I love that.
It also occurs from depression. So people that are really depressed will often think of the same thing over and over and over again, and that makes them more and more depressed. And often that leads to self-medicating and leads to problems with drinking and drug use as well.
And you know, I was talking with Tony Dennison about this, for many time guest on the show. And we were talking about, you know, you constantly hear alcoholics, you know, or people that are in denial say they always remember when they last drank. You know, that's always like how the fight goes. You know, I haven't had a drink since Tuesday. I can't be an alcoholic. and I was talking to him, and I said, if you talk to my father, who's as normie as, you know, quote normie as they come, he wouldn't remember the last time.
Right.
You know, people that don't have an alcohol problem usually don't remember the last time they had a drink.
Yeah. You know, it's part of it. Also, they're not drinking as much. So.
Right.
You know, clearly, I mean, if someone that has an alcohol problem, and generally, you know, as the later stage you get into alcoholism, the deeper the consequences. People start blacking out. They don't remember what happened. You know, they end up in the hospital. They get arrested. You know, they get in serious fights with friends or family. And they face consequences the next day, and often they don't really understand why. They don't know what happened. And
right.
They're like, well, you know, what's going on?
And the sick part is for alcoholics that shame that we talk about on this show a lot is what keeps them drinking longer. That shame and that pain of what did I do?
Yeah, and it's part of, you know, it's funny because, you know, America's kind of big into redemption. You know, it's sort of the American, you know, fable, right? You know, it's land of second chances. And you would think that people would want to actually go out and get better. But there's a part of alcoholism, drug addiction, where people deny that they have a problem because they want to keep using. And they also feel a lot of shame still. There's a lot of shame out there, more so around alcohol even than drug abuse. I think by the time somebody gets to the point where they're using serious illegal drugs, they really, you know, the shame thing is kind of not as important.
Right.
You know, because alcohol, you're still legal. It seems normal. If you're using illicit drugs, it's different. But now what's interesting is we're seeing heavy opioid dependence on pills. You know, Vicodin, codeine, oxycodone, fentanyl, all these types of pills. And so they originally get them legally from a doctor, and then they may start buying them on the street or whatever. And, there's less shame with that because they feel like, oh, a doctor gave it to me, whatever. But then they get so caught up in the cycle that they end up having to go to illicit drugs to keep up their addiction because it's too expensive to buy the pills on the street. They're $20, $30 and $40 a piece, and they end up finding out they can buy heroin a lot cheaper.
Which actually brings us to an interesting story. We'll get to it in a second, but it's the FDA approves Orexo. It's a drug to treat opioid addiction.
Right. Well, a lot of this is that Suboxone and Subutex went generic, which means that the patents expired, and so other companies can manufacture the drug. So now what's happening is you have multiple drug companies going around trying to create variations of mixtures of the two drugs, and they also put them in new delivery systems. So like gel tabs, right? Like when it went from pills to gel tabs, that allowed companies to put a new patent on the gel tab and then extend their patent beyond the first 20 years. That's why you see Advil, regular capsules, gel tabs, whatever, right? So the same thing happens with prescription drugs, where they'll take two generic drugs, they'll put them in a mixture, and then they'll put it in like a dissolvable tablet, and the patent is actually on the delivery system, the strip that dissolves in your tongue with that drug in it. It's not actually the mixture of the combination of drugs inside.
And that company, by the way, expects to make $500 million this year alone.
Yeah, easily.
And I want to talk about that, interestingly enough. By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to Clean Radio. The number here is 800-222-5222. That's 1-800-222-5222. We're talking about a lot of things tonight, but one of the things I want to talk about is how do you know if you're an alcoholic, somebody around you is an alcoholic. Let's go to Bob in Dana Point. Welcome to Clean Radio, Bob.
Hey, I want to tell you how much I look forward to your show every Sunday.
That's very
great.
sweet. Thank you.
Bob.
Hey, talking about creative ways, there was a guy next to me, or two lockers down at work, and every day he put the lunch pail back in. This is about 20 years ago, and rinse his mouth out with Listerine. Then one day I figured it out. He wasn't spitting out the Listerine.
Yep, that's I've seen people actually drink Windex, believe it or not. 2 bottles of Windex.
It's an amazing.
No, but he'd switch out in the bottle.
He switched it out. He had a little food coloring, yellow food coloring in his vodka.
No, he used bourbon.
Oh, it was bourbon. Wow.
Yeah. And, you're not sitting there watching for it, so it's an amber liquid, and he just goes down like that, and he turns away from you, and next thing he's putting a bottle in. Yeah, I didn't see him spit that out. It took me about 4 months to catch on.
People didn't smell it on him. You'd think bourbon's pretty strong. You'd think that.
Well, he'd eat those Altoids and things like that.
Right? He'd literally suck down Listerine after.
Yeah, I remember one morning I was driving, and when I was living in New Orleans, I used to have psychiatric hospitals in New Orleans. I was driving to work, and I had to stop to get gas. And this day before you could actually put your credit card in the gas machine, so I had to go into the gas station. And I walk in, and there's this guy in a suit, and he opens up his briefcase, and he buys a pint of vodka and 3 rolls of certs and throws them in his briefcase.
That's how you know you're an alcoholic,
briefcase,
by the way. That's one of the ways. But actually, Bob, it's a funny thing you bring this up. I was in a rehab in Florida many, many years ago, and my roommate there had been sober for a bunch of years. And he managed about 13 bars on the island of St. Kitts, or one of those islands, and he relapsed on Listerine. He used to drink Listerine every day because he didn't want people to see him drinking, and it was a major form of denial.
And he wouldn't switch it with bourbon or anything?
He wasn't that advanced of a thinker. He was just so focused on never going to the bars where he worked that to him, Listerine, and it was pretty an amazing story. I mean, he's sober now.
We see that in psych hospitals as well. People would come in, and they can get it, it's cheaper. And
it's part of that. That's the alcoholic thinking. It's you know how many people Andrew and I constantly hear from say, vodka doesn't smell.
Yeah.
And we're constantly saying, yes, it does. The only person that doesn't think they smell like vodka is the person that's drinking.
Right.
And,
all right, well, thanks again for your show.
Thank you, Bob.
Absolutely,
Call back
Bob.
anytime.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a great story.
That was Bob from from Dana Point telling us about his friend that would do that with Listerine. And
You know, you always hear these war stories,
Yeah.
all these creative drinkers and people, and their stories about how they got away with using and sort of later term alcoholism. And one of the things that, we're really trying to do, especially with this show, is point out to people that you don't have to get to that point.
Right.
There's ways to start recognizing early on that you're developing a problem with drinking. And some of those basic, simple things are, if you're drinking more than 5 drinks in one sitting, if you feel like you still want to drink when you're supposed to stop, that's a big one. Like everybody else is, they have a couple glasses of wine at dinner and you want to sit there and drink all night. If you're calling people at 3 a.m. because you want to hang out and talk.
If you're drunk dialing at 3 a.m, you're an alcoholic.
You got an issue there.
And
that's a big one, actually. You'd be surprised how many people say that when they really found out they had a problem was when nobody would hang out with them at 4 a.m. and keep drinking with them.
I had the same conversation with my sister for 5 nights in a row, and I didn't remember having the conversation.
Oh, no.
By the 6th night, she finally said to me, we've had this conversation. And here's the thing, what we're talking about, and we're saying this with humor, is because these are all things people feel an extreme amount of shame about.
Right.
And years later, as you get sober, and you're sober a long time, or any time, you could start looking at these situations.
Well, also, you meet people that are also in recovery, and you find out that the stories are similar.
You're so not unique.
There's nothing special about being an alcoholic.
But one of the other ways of knowing you're an alcoholic is, I remember I used to drink, and I had to be in work, let's say at work the next day. 6 o'clock came. I would say, I'm not going to drink past 6, 7,
right,
then 8,
right.
Then I was like, I'm done. I'm just, no more time.
The other one is the big one when people figure out they can drink in the morning and they're like, they don't get struck down by lightning. They're
Right.
like, oh, I can actually drink when I wake up.
And that's the later stage. That's
Yeah.
the next stage. So if you just tuned in, you are listening to Clean Radio. Give us a call. The number here is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're talking about what is an alcoholic? How do you know if you're an alcoholic? And let's go to Anne Marie in Massachusetts. Welcome to Clean Radio, Anne Marie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I have a question I have a daughter who's 23 and in early recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a lot of shame, and a lot of people don't know. I mean, some do, but some don't. She's not had this really public addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But she's
What is she addicted to, by the way?
Opiates.
Opiates, okay.
Yeah, opiates. And she, I think she did do methadone for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then relapsed, and now is in just finishing a 90-day program, and probably going to go to a sober house from here, but very embarrassed, and was at a social event recently with some family on and just had a really tough time, didn't tell anyone where she's been.
Right.
Kind of made up some kind of a funny story about and my husband and I feel awkward with some of our friends know, but not many of them, and we felt like it was her decision to decide who to tell and when to tell, but shame is what's come up.
I think that's right. It's her decision. I mean, she's an adult now, and even it sounds like you've given her an awful lot of support and help, which is incredible to stick by your daughter like that. A lot of people just abandon their children when they have a problem.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is about coping skills of how to learn to interact and still be sober. Like, especially with alcohol, like this is one example I always give is people who are alcoholic, like if people pressure them about alcohol, there's things you can say, without having to disclose that you're an alcoholic. You can say I'm on antibiotics, or you can, people, you go to a party, you bring a glass of water that you already drink a bottle of water, and just, then nobody asks you for a drink. If you want a drink, you just say, oh, I already got my water. With opiates, it's a little more difficult because most people that are addicted to opiates, they begin becoming addicted to opiates because they're trying to not feel anything, and that's really what opiates do. They make you feel like you're separated from any feeling. You might know the ideas there, or that the potential of the pain from the feelings is there, but the opiate makes that sort of go away. It's like the ultimate avoidance drug. And so when you come off it, and when you're in recovery from, especially early on with opiates, it's really coping not just with social stigma and shame, but it's coping with internally all these feelings that you've ignored and pushed down with these drugs for however long you've been addicted. So it's dealing with all those inner feelings, and then you also feel shame about, the fact that you were addicted, and so it's hard to talk to anybody about all those feelings and about the things that you really need to talk about, because to talk about it, you then have to explain why you need to talk about all these issues. So that's why it's so important that she surround herself with people that are sober and understand what she's gone through, and that she has, plenty of outlets to deal with and vent and start recovering on the issues that she's been suppressing emotionally, and the pain that, she went through that got her hooked on in the first place.
Okay.
Anne-Marie, let me ask you a question. Are you guys going to get help for yourself?
Yes. Yep.
So that's amazing. You guys are good. And also she's 23 years old, Anne-Marie. I got sober when I was 22. One of the great things out there is there was a fellowship of a lot of young people that are getting sober at earlier and younger ages that she could really grasp onto. And that was like a big saving grace of mine, was that I wasn't alone.
Yep.
And, so.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
She did not have a problem with alcohol, but because she's being monitored, and I think drinking is out of, and I think she's feeling uncomfortable in situations where people are offering her a beer, in a social situation, and she can't have anything, and she shouldn't have anything.
Right.
But should we remove? She lives with us and probably will return here. We're not sure. But if she does, should we remove alcohol from our home?
That's a great question, Anne-Marie. We got to go to break. Can you hold on, and we're going to get to you right after the break.
Sure.
It's a short break.
It's a short break. That's Anne-Marie in Massachusetts. Andrew, that's an amazing question. We'll get back to it after the break, obviously, but we've all had to deal with these things. And
Absolutely.
I would, if you just tuned in, you're listening to Clean Radio. I'd love the people out there that are listening to call up and give Anne-Marie a suggestion, because this isn't easy. A lot of people out there have 23, 25-year-old children that are using. Thank God, in this case, Anne-Marie's daughter is getting sober. So if anybody out there has any suggestions, any ideas of how to help, give us a call. The number here is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. You're listening to Clean Radio. The discussion continues.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits. Now back to Andrew Spanswick and Judah Friedman.
Welcome back to Clean Radio. We'd like to thank everybody out there that's listening. We know a lot of people sometimes are a little nerve-wracked about talking about this stuff. We had some amazing calls tonight, but you could also go to Clean Radio /Facebook. Facebook/Clean Radio. I always do that.
Yeah, we're not bigger than Facebook yet.
Facebook.com/Clean Radio. And Rand, I think I'm going to say you're wrong on that. You could just do Facebook/Clean Radio. And then go to the do you even need to put in .com anymore?
You do. You just don't have to put the www anymore.
Okay, you don't have to put the www anymore. But
Judah's our tech genius as well.
I am an absolute tech genius. They call me Judah Tech Genius. Let's get back to Anne-Marie. We have Anne-Marie on the line in Massachusetts. She's going through a rough time with her daughter. Her daughter is a little sober now, and she's debating when she comes back home, I'm imagining, what to do with the alcohol, in the house.
Yeah.
So Anne-Marie, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sticking on.
And
so, this is a tough question because, there's alcohol everywhere. So you could drive around. There's constant triggers. There's an alcohol. I'm not sure exactly where you live, but there's pretty much, if you want alcohol, you're going to get it, and you're going to see it everywhere. A big part of treatment and dealing with alcoholism is learning how to deal with those triggers and those feelings. And since alcohol is so abundant, having it in the house is definitely one of those issues where you might want to take it out until you're comfortable, and also talk to her about it, see how she feels about it.
But you were also asking something else, weren't you? You were saying, can she drink?
No,
I
wasn't.
Just was wondering if the alcohol should be gone.
I actually think that's an interesting question, because several people I know that called her to talk with her or have tried to support her do have an occasional glass of wine when they had an opiate problem in the past. And I mean, to me, it seems like everything she should not do anything.
Right,
One was in lower her inhibitions. But
that's exactly right. It's about lowering inhibitions. And the problem with alcohol is that it for some people it can trigger the use of other drugs, or it can replace the effect of the opiate, especially because opiates numb you, and so does alcohol as a depressant. So,
and we get that question a lot.
They're very similar, and alcohol is a huge trigger for people that used alcohol with their drugs. Now, the number one way to overdose is alcohol and opiates. Right. So, her avoidance of alcohol is particularly important, especially if she might relapse.
And it goes to show you how in this country we still look at alcohol that it's not this lethal thing.
It's the most dangerous drug out there besides tobacco.
Right, and I'm constantly saying to people, Anne-Marie, because people, I pretty much drank. That was my thing. And people are always like, when they're saying, well, why can't I drink? I just did opiates. And I'm like, well, why can't I smoke crack?
I mean, if you had another substance out there that, you go to college and everybody goes out and then they're all throwing up at the end of the night, or any substance like a food, you eat this food and then you throw up and then you can't do anything for a day, they'd get rid of that food, right? Mm-hmm. But alcohol, it's like a rite of passage.
It's this legal thing. And so listen, Anne-Marie, I would love for you to keep in contact with us. Let us know how it's going.
Well, I'd also like to know, just really quickly, Anne-Marie, like how did you figure out how to start dealing with this? I mean, what was your journey like so far?
Our daughter came to us, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's good that she had the ability to do that.
Yeah, she came to us, and she went into a detox and then tried methadone. And, I think the idea, and then as she was weaning on the methadone, et cetera, she relapsed. It was a brief relapse, but it was a real relapse. But she had never been in recovery.
Right.
She had never really been in recovery in terms of building her life, and creating a life for herself. So she decided herself, with our support, to go into a 90-day program. She did a detox and did a 90-day program, and now she's at the very end of that and waiting to likely go into a quite rigorous sober house.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we're waiting for a bed to open up, but she's staying in the program.
And this is
longer.
in Massachusetts?
Yep, Massachusetts. Yep.
And I really want to, it's really amazing what if you could give one piece of advice to parents out there that are listening right now that are struggling, what would that advice be?
Oh boy. I think try to find a support group to be able to talk with people and hear their stories. We have there's a program called Learn to Cope in Massachusetts that was started by a mother who had a son with opiate addiction, and there's meetings in about 8 places in Massachusetts once a week.
That's great.
That's amazing.
And it's mostly parents.
And your husband goes with you too?
Not always, but he's supportive.
I love that. And the reason I ask that is because you're calling from Massachusetts. I see this, Massachusetts guy, and I love it because I have the image of my father in my head too, going to get help for his son and being supportive, and it's a really amazing part of recovery that you get to see the change in the family too.
Right.
I agree with you. And that whole, I think, learning to detach with love and not having their recovery mean more to you than it does to them. Yep.
That's great insight.
That's amazing. Anne-Marie, I would love if you could call us back anytime. If you ever need anything, please go to Facebook and Facebook/KLEAN Radio. Private message if you need anything, any help we could be to you. Please let us know.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Anne-Marie in Massachusetts, Andrew. That's an amazing story of, family going through it and trying to get through it.
And it's amazing how common it is. I get about probably 10 to 15 emails a day on average with people just begging for help that have no resources. And it's tough. It's tough to read, getting all these emails.
And we're trying to offer resources, and we're trying to, with what we're talking about with giving away to people with the help with outpatient. We know people are struggling right now and can't afford it, whether you're in Washington or California or somewhere in the middle. If you could figure out a way to get to our outpatient program, we will gladly do anything.
We can make accommodations a lot easier. We're actually filling up largely in our residential centers, which is,
amazing.
A sign that
sad.
Well, it shows you that there's huge demand. And, with Obamacare coming online, that's going to be a huge rush of demand for beds. So, a lot of people that are out there that are waiting to get help, the sooner the better, because there's going to be an under capacity of beds, and we're seeing it already. There's just enormous demand for what we're doing, and people are becoming more educated about it and getting help earlier.
And I got to give you props, and I'm not saying this because you're my friend, but you've been around the world lately spreading the message in different countries, different continents, talking about, and it gives me a lot of gratitude for how far we are here.
Yeah.
Compared to the United Kingdom and all these.
Well, yeah, definitely America's out there on the cutting edge of addiction treatment, and there's a lot of confusion actually where we're all going to go. It still is an uncurable disease, and a lot of it has to do, I believe, with the people you work with as much as anything else, and forming relationships and getting good quality treatment.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. We're talking about tonight, what is an alcoholic? How do you know if you're an alcoholic? Getting rid of the shame. We're talking about a lot of things. We've had some amazing calls tonight. Give us a call. The number is 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Let's go to Dennis, calling from San Bernardino. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Dennis.
Yes, good afternoon. Just wanted to put my 2 cents in. My ex-wife was an alcoholic pretty bad. I would not keep alcohol in the house once she got into AA and tried to start recovering and getting serious, and I just wanted to give her all the support I could. It really didn't bother me too much to keep alcohol out of the house because I'm really not into alcohol much. I'll have an occasional glass of wine at Olive Garden or something like that, but if you really care about your loved ones out there, you support them any way you can. And the problem is, I know with some alcoholics, they get violent and they really, for lack of a better word, just act really stupid when they drink. And that was the problem in her case. And by not keeping alcohol in the house, she wasn't tempted in any way, and it really helped keep peace in the house. And unfortunately, I had to cut her loose a couple of years ago for various other reasons that come along with alcoholism, with lying and being deceitful and a little bit of narcissism. But again,
yeah, that sounds more like borderline personality disorder than just alcoholism.
And that's what one of the things we talk about on the show sometimes is, Dennis, it's not always just the alcoholism.
Right. There's often underlying personality structure, developmental issues that go along with drug addiction, especially alcoholics that or drug addicts that are really compulsive and just a little bit changes them immediately, and they're off to the races in a really strong way, as opposed to people that have like slowly become an addict over time and just taken more and more and more as they build tolerance.
And I have to agree with Dennis, by the way. I love what you did for, it's just taking everything out of the house. If you have to ask, and I say this to people out there that are listening, of what to do, if you're asking the question, just err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I've also seen, though, that sometimes the presence of a bottle of alcohol in the house of an alcoholic that's been through treatment sometimes isn't such a bad thing.
Right.
Because it reminds them sort of like why it's there, and if they're working on that trigger. Now, a lot that's very debatable whether you should do that or not. But the truth of the matter is that anybody can walk 5, 10, 15 minutes and go get alcohol if they really want it. It's really about talking, communication, dealing with triggers, dealing with the underlying problems that go with the drug addiction, and not thinking like once someone's sober or once they get out of treatment that things are over and everything's fine. That's really just the beginning.
By the way, Dennis, thank you for the call.
Yeah, Dennis. That's the when you get out of treatment, that's just the beginning of then giving you a place to go and a place to start, and you got to really build an infrastructure of people around you to continue to stay sober.
By the way, do you Andrew, this is an interesting point you're making. I mean, do you think when you get sober, and this is something I say constantly, I accepted it. I was beat, this time, and that was a long time ago. So no matter what I saw or came into my path, I was done. Mm-hmm. Do you, so even if I saw alcohol, it might have affected me a little bit, but not to the point of drinking.
Well, the funny thing is most people, when they first get sober, they go through a period where they're repulsed by alcohol.
I still am.
Yeah, and but then people that are triggered by it will then go back to it, even though they're repulsed by it. And that's sort of more late stage addiction. Then the other thing you get is where people retest, like they're they think that, oh, okay, I went through and
a phase.
It was a phase. I feel fine now.
That jail thing
I'm
was
healthy,
a phase.
right? It was all just
the manslaughter thing, just a phase.
Right. And, and even in AA, they say, if you don't believe you're an alcoholic, go have a drink and see how it works out. So, there is this sort of unfortunate thing where the person really actually themselves has to accept that they have a problem and that the only way to stop that problem from reoccurring is to be abstinent.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call here at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Let's go to Anthony in Cleveland. Anthony, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
How are you?
Can you please turn down your radio, Anthony?
Let's see here.
We got the delay echo.
Down.
There you go.
There you go. Welcome to...
Right.
Oh,
No, you still have to do it, Anthony.
My radio's not on.
there you go. It's off now.
There we go. So Anthony's calling in from Cleveland, wondering, do you think you're an addict? Do you think I'm an addict? Is that
Yes, that is correct.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on, Anthony?
I'll give you my 30-second, maybe 60-second rundown. I'm 43 now. I've had, I guess you could say, I've had the signs in the past of alcoholism, blackouts, denial, service at bars, concern of family members, that sort of thing. One of the other ones would be I have had 2 DUI arrests.
I'm going to say yes right away. You have 15 seconds, Anthony. The answer is yes.
All right.
Why do you think you might not be, Anthony?
Okay, that's good question. The second one, my second arrest was in 2010, the first one being in 1992. After the second arrest, the probation period ended, which was 9 months, and I started taking drinks again, going to bar and so forth. Since then, I've had no issues with it at all. No desire to get drunk, no desire to deal with the hangovers. I can't even believe that I dealt with them in the past. I don't feel unsafe around it. I haven't even been drunk, actually, since that point in time.
So how long is that?
3 years.
But you're drinking moderately?
Sparingly.
Sparingly.
Moderately, sparingly, and moderately.
Okay.
The reason why I called, just to let you know, is the people around me have expressed concern at this time, which I can fully understand.
Yeah, you're playing. You're playing with a loaded gun. I mean, the reality is that we got to cut you off, Anthony, because there's an echo. But stay in and listen, okay? So anyway, thanks for the call. Sorry, Anthony, but the echo is really bad on our earphones. So the big thing here is that you're kind of playing with a loaded gun. I mean, the consequences from your drinking could be behavioral. In other words, you might not actually have alcoholism per se, where you really have a compulsive desire to drink to the point where you're always drunk. But you're playing with a situation where a substance has brought you to the point where you've been arrested and where you've been kicked out of bars and you've had serious consequences in your life because of it. So,
I mean, and those are serious consequences.
These are major consequences. So my question would be, why even bother with the moderate drinking? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are trying to push programs to make people go into sort of drinking moderation, moderate drinking programs. The one that used to run it actually got a DUI, killed somebody, killed a couple people. Because what happens is that you can sometimes just snap back into your heavy drinking pattern, and then that's when accidents happen. And you're lucky you had 2 DUIs and didn't kill anybody or kill yourself. And
it's fun. When I was getting sober, there was a guy in New York. His name was Brian. And they used to call him Good Orderly Direction Brian because he didn't believe in God. But he was sober like 35 years. He was an amazing man. And he would hear people share at a meeting, and he'd hear them say, if I drink, this is what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. And he would look at them and he'd go, then you're not an alcoholic. Because if you know what's going to happen, you have manageability. He goes, I start drinking, not a clue.
See, I think there's different types of addiction and alcoholism. And I think also there's nothing wrong with getting sober at the point where you've been abusing alcohol. Like, let's say Anthony here doesn't have full-blown alcoholism. He doesn't have a compulsion to drink even now. He's able to moderate his drinking. But he's had a history of the abuse of alcohol. And most people have. I mean, most people go to college or at the end of high school or whenever they legally are able to drink, will binge drink. And most adolescents, young adults have periods of binge drinking, and then they go to regular moderate drinking. But there's 12, 15% of the population that isn't able to do that. They start and then they can't stop.
And you've had 2 DUIs, right?
I mean, that's
and on the third, what are you going to? I
you're
mean,
going to jail
and kill somebody, God forbid,
or kill somebody, and then go to jail for a long time.
That's exactly right, and that's
prison, actually, involuntary manslaughter.
And that's the thing we're talking about. If you're questioning, non-alcoholics almost never question whether they're an alcoholic or drug addict. Never question. It's not a question that they think about.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to Clean Radio. We have amazing calls coming in tonight. The number here is 800-222.
One last thing, though, on the Anthony. I'm sorry to cut off the number. Go ahead and say it first.
800-222-5222. 800-222-5222. There you go.
But just let me say one last thing I want to say about with Anthony is that, a lot of times people that are addicted want to hold on to the thing that they're addicted to because, like, alcohol becomes your best friend. Right. So, for a period of time, even once someone becomes sober, they can drink in moderation, and that makes them feel safe because they feel like, oh, at least I haven't totally given up my best friend.
Right.
My best friend's still here, and if things get really bad, I can always go back to that best friend in a way that's really hardcore drinking.
Right.
So, Anthony, you might want to think about that. Or you just, is there a reason to even drink at all?
Why play
why with that loaded gun? You might be just fooling yourself into thinking that things are okay when they're not really.
Okay, let's go to Don in North Hollywood. Welcome to Clean Radio, Don.
Hi, I was just making a comment regarding the lady that was asking you about getting rid of alcohol in the house. She was calling. I think she had a problem with her daughter.
Yes.
Right.
Well, to me, the answer is quite clear. You do get rid of all alcohol in the house. You do not have any alcohol when you have somebody that has a problem, whether they're a recovering alcoholic, whether in some stage of rehab or whatever. The fact that alcohol is available in a number of places outside the house is totally irrelevant. The fact is that just having it in the house is just making
having a safe place.
What's that?
Having one safe place.
Oh, yeah.
For her daughter.
Where there's no alcohol.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be good. So that's the only thing I was commenting. I don't think she should have any alcohol in the house at all.
Yeah, I think that's a fair opinion. And I think I think that for most people that probably is the right decision.
Yeah.
There are people that that need to have some sort of, for different reasons, they're going to be exposed to alcohol in the house. And it happens even in places where there is no alcohol in the house. There's always there's a party or something. And so my big thing is that people learn to cope with the presence of alcohol all around them as an alcoholic. But I do agree that you're right, that, why take the risk?
Err on the side of caution.
Exactly, yeah. That's the first step.
Yeah. And more important,
get rid of the stimuli.
Yeah, and more important, though, is to recognize what might be a relapse. One of the things that I really work on in our treatment center is that odds are people are going to relapse. More people will relapse than won't relapse. Even after, with the best treatment that we can provide. And so the goal for me is, on an outcome standpoint, is not just people getting sober at first, but if they do relapse, how quickly they get back into treatment.
And keeping that line of connection open.
So they don't have to go like all the way back down to the bottom before they can get treatment again and continue to stay sober. That's one of the issues I have with counting days with AA, is that it puts a lot of pressure on people to not come back if they go out drinking, because they feel a lot of shame about losing all their time.
Well, the whole idea is to take it step by step, and the first thing is you go ahead and you remove the stimuli.
Right.
If there are other places that have alcohol and that person is in that area, well, that's a different situation. But the first thing is you just remove the stimuli. As far as relapses go, yeah, you're right, but of course you have to treat everybody on an individual basis.
Right. Yeah, and that's what we do.
And and what I love about this, Don, is that we're having dialogue about these things. And that's the most important thing, that we're talking about this stuff.
Absolutely.
I think it does more than talking. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Hey, thank you,
Don. And Andrew, and that's one of the things we love about the show, is that we get to talk about this stuff, because you and I have both been through the ringer with other things, with certain things, me and the 12 steps and many of those things, where we didn't feel comfortable talking about these things. And you'd hear the loudest people giving suggestions that probably shouldn't have been giving the suggestions.
Yeah, I think the last point there with the caller was that everybody's an individual, and that it does require individual treatment. No two they always say every alcoholic is an alcoholic and they're all the same. I've never really found that to be true. I found that there's different types of alcoholics. And there's several, for me, clear categories, and the way that we treat different alcoholics is clearly different. I don't treat every patient the same. It's impossissible.
So we're running out of time. Okay. We have a couple calls left. We'll get to them
going fast.
So let's go to Frank. Frank, welcome from Burbank. Welcome to Clean Radio.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm calling regarding the gentleman that called and said that he was that he supported his wife during her alcoholism, and I supported my wife when I found out she was taking pills, and I supported my wife, when she attempted suicide by drinking antifreeze. I supported my wife when she had to go to jail because she stole these pills, and I supported my wife when she had to go to Acton through a sentencing through court because she stole these pills. And when she got out of Acton, she came home and she abandoned myself and my son. And I'm mad.
No, I can understand that. And that's one of the issues is that the definition of support is very important. There's a difference between supporting someone and then still holding them accountable to the consequences of their behavior. And especially once you're married and you have a son, there does come a point where sometimes you have to recognize that you have to protect yourself and the safety of your son. And that unfortunately often ends in separation or divorce. And often I encourage a lot of people that are sort of in that same situation early on to be in therapy and be in couples therapy. And if for no other reason, if not keeping the marriage together, to figure out how to separate the marriage and protect the family in a healthy way and in a way that is structured so that if the person finally does become healthy, they can reintegrate somehow.
Frank, what are you doing for yourself right now to get help to deal with this?
I'm not doing anything for myself right now. And see, what happened is a year and a half, she filed for divorce and we got divorced.
Right.
And there was really nothing to give each other. We really didn't have much, but we got legally divorced. She filed for divorce, and a year and a half later, she came over here and said that she needed a place to stay because the place she was staying at, she stole some Vicodin from the woman's elderly mother that she was staying with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So she had no place to stay. So she's been living actually in my apartment right now for the last 4 years.
Wow.
She sleeps on the couch. I sleep on the bed. We don't have any kind of relationship whatsoever. And my mother died a couple of years ago and left me like $25,000. And I needed that money to pay rent and, pay for her stuff and pay for my son's stuff because I was kind of ill and I wasn't working and I was on unemployment, and the whole story, you've heard that before. But now that I have no money, I'm trying to get back to work. She's talking about, moving on again.
Frank, would you like to get help?
I'm sorry?
I know times are rough, but would you like to get some counseling?
Well, I don't know what it's going to do for me.
That's, the thing is that you're dealing with a long-term complex problem. And the fact that your sense of boundaries about what's appropriate and not appropriate, honestly, in this short period, and I hate to diagnose people and talk about stuff in such a short period, but there's a certain level of denial and a certain level of taking too much responsibility for problems that you shouldn't be taking responsibility for. You're taking
the weight of the world on you.
Right, and you're taking all that negativity and taking responsibility for it, and that's going to take you down.
One of our closest friends, and the reason we're able to talk about this stuff, Frank, is because for many reasons. But Andrew and I, one of our closest friends, has gone through this for a long time of pure misery. And
it really is an abusive relationship. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about someone that's using you for money and then doesn't respect you or your boundaries or your health or your financial concerns.
I'll tell you what, Frank, we're running out of time. I'm sorry. Please stay on the line. If you're interested in getting help, Frank, we'll get you the help you need.
Okay.
Please, I beg of you to stay on the line, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the call. Hopefully he takes us up on it.
Well, this is very common actually, where the person that's on the other side of the alcoholic relationship actually is not just the enabler, but ends up being abused. And there's a lot of verbal and physical abuse that can exist for the spouse. And if you're male, it's really hard to come forward and say, hey, look, I'm actually a victim of spousal abuse.
It's like one of the hardest
physical
things.
and psychological, and recognizing that is difficult.
I'm sorry I dropped the call accidentally, so please call back. We have a couple quick minutes left. Let's go to Joanne really quickly. Joanne, welcome to Clean Radio. She's calling from Pasadena.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Joanne?
I'm good, thank you. I'd just like some advice on how I handled ending a 3-year relationship with an alcoholic. When I did meet him 3 years ago, he was sober and going through AA, and I was, it was amazing because he was growing as a person. And then he relapsed about 9 months after, and been drinking ever since. So I stayed with him and, encouraged him whenever he didn't feel good, just suggested, maybe, need help or whatever. But as time went on, it just never ended, and that was priority. First, that was priority in our relationship was the alcohol, pot, and cigarettes over me. Right. So I finally officially set boundaries and said I don't want to be forced in a relationship, and priorities. And he considered it berating him. He said I was berating him and smearing him and for saying things.
So basically,
he was verbally abusing you.
He became that guy again. He's
projecting his issues onto you and making you the victim.
Yeah. I actually do. I feel like, oh my God, maybe I should have stayed with them.
Because that's what alcoholics are great at doing.
Great at manipulating you into getting what they need and what they want.
And taking hostage takers. Joanne, you asked a question, and the answer is: are you going to, to Al-Anon? Are you going to family counseling?
Well, she's talking about.
I do go to counseling, and it has been suggested that I do go to Al-Anon.
So, are you safe now in this relationship? Is there any, besides the verbal abuse, which is painful? Is there been any physical abuse?
I never really considered that verbal abuse. That's interesting.
No, it absolutely is. It's a standard pattern of verbal abuse.
It's the worst sometimes.
Verbal psychologically, abuse, psychologically, it can be much more damaging than physical abuse.
Because the physical you see.
Right, you recognize, and there's and people can other people can recognize it. My big thing is that you make sure you're taking care of yourself, and it sounds like you've sort of made a decision that you need to get out of this marriage. So, reach out there, work with your therapist, and make a plan.
And do us a favor because we're running out of time, Joanne. Can you give us a call back next week?
Okay, awesome. I will.
Please give us a call back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and I wish we could get to all the calls tonight, but we can't. Larry will have to get to you next week, so please call back. There's a lot of stuff talking about on the show tonight, Andrew, and there's a lot of people out there that are in need of help.
I know but it's good. The help's out there, and these things are things that people can get over and through.
And sorry, Jeannie W, that I didn't get a chance to get to you. You had some great points on Facebook. Please, everybody out there, if you need any sort of help, anything, and you're going through a rough time right now, we're running out of time, give us a call at 888-601-6040.
That's our intake line and
601-6040. That's an absolutely free call if you need any sort of help. Andrew,
hey, it was good having the show tonight, and I look forward to next week. I guess we're going to have to start having more shows.
Yes, and that is the plan. So stay tuned. The discussion continues at KLEANradio.com.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.